Are you struggling with forgiveness? Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Pursuit, a Cross Point City Church podcast that pursues a deeper dive into the scripture from last week's sermon. I'm Carlos Fernandez. I'm here with Matt Moody and our lead pastor, James Griffin. What's going on, y'all?
Good to see you.
Howdy.
Yeah. Howdy.
Good to be back. I think you saw that Terry Black's barbecue had in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. Shout out to Terry Black.
Felt the need to give you a howdy, man.
Yeah. Just to make me even more hungry.
Hey, it was good. I went with you to that barbecue spot.
Oh, it was great.
It's legit.
It is so good.
I think we just did some free advertising for Terry Black's barbecue. If you're ever in Dallas, Texas, you should go eat some.
Yeah, Terry Black, sponsor us. 100%. All right, before we get started into the podcast, this is the last week of fasting.
Yeah.
And that means we're getting closer as well.
That's right.
So I just wanted to ask, how y'all feeling through the fast so far?
Yeah. I mean, so far so good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I feel great. I mean, I know last week was like, man, I'm hungry, but it's kind of just the reality of what we're doing. But I was sharing with somebody, I think at the gym, past couple of years, I've done a sun up, sun down, which is a great fast, especially if you fasted before and you're looking for just another way to do it, a little more challenge. That's a great thing to do. But this year, regardless of which fast, in the previous years, I've just had health things going on that during our 21 days, I've just asked God and to resolve some of those things, to give answers to some of those things. And this year's different because my prayer has just been what we are in. It's just season of close. Yeah. Like, Lord, would you just draw me closer? Would I just be more aware of your presence? Yeah. And so that's been cool. So, you go through hunger pains or you're hungry. We sat through creative brainstorm offsite, and there's snacks and breakfast and lunch and all these things. Yeah. And I joke, I'm like, I'm coveting everybody else's food, but truly it's just like, Lord, I mean, this is not over spiritual, but God, can I just hunger for you the way I'm hungering for food right now? Yeah. And when I eat, and it is satisfying. Yep. Lord, would your word satisfy me in the same way? So it's just those kind of prayers. It's been good.
No, it's good, man. Awesome. Yeah, similar. I mean, the physical aspect is one thing, I mean, my wife always jokes with me and says that I eat like I have a tapeworm. So, I legit eat all day. So
true story.
It is true. I like to eat and I eat a lot. And so these seasons are always physically challenging. I mean, brain fog, headaches, you feel tired, but spiritually so rewarding.
Yeah.
And I do feel like, just in the past couple of weeks, like my time with the Lord's been so good, time in the Word's been so good. I don't want to say a different, but maybe a renewed dependency in prayer, like you were just describing, where it's like, my prayer has been, God, make me more desperate, make me more hungry. Like I want to grow in my desire and passion for you, I want to be like the psalmist in Psalm 84. There's just longing to be in the presence of God. Yeah. Better's one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. Like I just want that to be my heart all the time. It's been very spiritually rewarding, and I'm looking forward to this final week. I think I'm gonna push it just a little bit, just kind of go next level in terms of fasting. And so, it's been good. How about you, bro?
Yeah, I'm not as hungry as I was in the beginning, so that's really good. So my appetite has definitely changed. And it's crazy how my appetite for food has changed, and so my appetite for the world has changed, right? Like I don't desire to consume as much media as I did before, or to rush out the door to go do something. Like I woke up this morning super early, and I'm just sitting, I'm just reading, and it's just like I feel a little bit obviously lighter because I've lost some weight, but kind of clear. Like I woke up and I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing. It's no fog to like get up and like, this drag. I felt like I had enough sleep and it was crazy.
It's good.
So it's been good. I love the challenge. I love pushing myself to do things. I would love to figure out a way to integrate fasting into my life more than just like once a year. I love the fact that we do it as a church.
I think you should just start doing 21 days every month, bro.
Yeah.
That's great.
3 weeks
That's
out
a great idea.
Eat a week and fast for 3.
Tell me how it goes. Carlos.
Then you'll find me in the woods. Where's Carlos? Eating honey. But no, I mean, just figure out a way to do it. Maybe just do it on our prayer days when we as a team.
That's really good.
And so, since this is the last week, we are getting closer to closer.
That's right.
And so if you guys don't know what closer is, it's our revival nights pretty much. We got 4 days of it, 3 nights, 1 day.
Yep.
We got guest speakers coming in. It's going to be phenomenal. We bring our entire church together, and what our goal is just to draw closer to the Lord.
That's it, man.
Through worship, through sitting under his teaching. So we're just excited about that.
Yep.
I don't think, if you want to find out more about that, just check out our website. You can find out about the speakers.
Go to the app.
App.
It would really help us this year too if people would RSVP.
Yeah.
And RSVP for all the nights that you're planning to come. You know, I mean, like you said, bro, we're trying to bring people together from all locations, but our room here in Cartersville is only so big.
Yeah.
So we're going to have 2 rooms up and going, and we really want to prepare well for everyone that's planning to be here.
Yeah.
So if you can just go on the app and let us know what nights you're planning to come, that will really, really help us.
Yeah.
But to your point, yeah, man, you got to be in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, it's special every year. I don't know. I just have this sense that this year's going to be really special. I don't know. I've just been thinking about this over the last few days, and just to know what we're doing. I mean, going after the presence of God, praying intentionally, just lingering.
Yeah.
I was reading in a book this morning in my devotional time, Secrets of the Secret Place, which has been powerful. It's been super helpful for me. And he was talking about the importance of lingering, not rushing out of the presence of God, but staying until God is finished. Bro, that's strong.
Yeah.
He's like, oftentimes we rush out of his presence and he ain't finished yet. And he said, if we really want all that God has to offer us, at times we have to linger. And the thing that I love about these closer nights is that we have the opportunity to just linger a little bit longer, you know? We don't have people coming in after. We don't have to turn gatherings around, whatever. So these nights are really, really special, and we don't want to be done until God is done. So come out, be a part. Yeah.
And just show up to the days you can show up to. All right.
That's right.
It's going to be good. I'm excited. I know you guys are. But all right, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about the sermon. We just finished the series, The One.
Yeah.
And it was really, really good. I'm not going to lie. I've heard this story, all these stories, these parables that Jesus used all the time. I've heard so many sermons on them, but I felt like I've taken away so many nuggets from this series that has encouraged me to pray hard for the one, right? For the people in my life that don't know Jesus, but then also learning that at one point I was the one, you know? And then sometimes I got to fight against being the older brother.
Yeah, for sure.
And today you talked about forgiveness. And so I thought that would be a good topic to talk about, because forgiveness is a tricky subject when you really dig into it, right?
Yeah, it's not easy.
So in the story, we see a father forgiving a son.
Yeah.
And then we see a brother not willing to forgive a brother. Right?
Yeah.
And so here's the question, right? That I feel like everybody struggles with forgiveness in some way.
Yeah.
And so let's just answer, how do we forgive?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
How do we forgive?
Yeah. I mean, I've never struggled with it, so I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. Yeah.
Man.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Pretty much my life.
Yeah. No, but to your point, bro, the struggle is real.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been in a place where we feel wronged by someone, hurt by someone. There's some type of injustice committed against us. Somebody does something really stupid. And in this case, in the story, I know there are people who have this story. They do something dumb and it impacts the whole family.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's not you directly, but it's the family directly, and you're a part of the family. And so in ways you kind of feel that and see that. And so, yeah, the struggle's real, dude. I think it's easy for all of us to carry feelings of anger and resentment and bitterness toward a person who's wronged us in some way. So what you asked is, how do we do it? How do we do it, right?
Yeah, how do you forgive?
Yeah. I think step number one is you've got to own the difficulty of it.
Yeah.
Like, I think like taking a step back, and I'm going to go somewhere with this. I think taking a step back and understanding this is too hard for me. Because forget, this is a supernatural act.
Yeah.
When you choose to no longer hold someone else's sin against them, you are acting like the God who made you. You're acting like the one who came to save you.
Yeah.
I think we've got to take a step back and just own the fact that, like, I can't do that in my own power and in my own strength. Truly. I might say, hey, I forgive you, whatever. When it's something big, I think we've got to just be aware enough to go, I need help with this. Mm-hmm. And God, if you don't help me with this, then my heart's going to stay bitter. My heart, I'm going to just have resentment in me.
Yeah.
And so I think part of this is like Holy Spirit stuff. He's got to do this work and produce it in us. And then I also think it requires just a deep awareness of the gospel. Yeah. I mean, I've preached this in the past, that forgiven people forgive people. Mm-hmm. So it's only when we understand the depths of the forgiveness that we've received that we can extend that same type of forgiveness to other people.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't understand what Jesus has done for you to purchase your forgiveness, it's going to be really hard for you to give that away to someone else who needs it.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely right. I think now that I'm a Christian, I've been walking with Jesus, I think that's what helps me forgive people is understanding that I've been forgiven of so much. So who am I to withhold forgiveness from somebody? Yeah. And so I don't know if it's used for forgiveness, but have you ever heard anybody say, like, time to go take that medicine, and they're going to go say something to somebody? You've never heard that before?
Never heard that, bro.
Never.
So my mentor, he said he had to go say sorry or something like that. And he's like, well, time to go take this medicine. Yeah. And it never hit me. Like, medicine is something that you take for yourself. Mm-hmm. So when you forgive somebody, it does as much for you as it does for the other person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so forgiveness, when I see it, forgiveness is kind of like freeing yourself of whatever situation, of whatever bitterness, anger that you have, resentment. And there's a book, I think it's called, I don't even know the name of it, but I know it's by Gene Edwards.
Okay.
And it was talking about forgiveness. And he uses the story of Jesus, and he talks about, hey, when Jesus was crucified on the cross, and then he rose again, and he went to his disciples, and he was talking to them. He's like, did you remember him saying, like, can you believe those people? They slapped me, and they stabbed me on the side, and they mocked me, and they spit on me. Do you remember when they did that? Do you remember when they gave me the sour wine when I asked for water? Do you remember that? And he's like, nah, you don't remember that.
Yeah.
Because Jesus already forgave him.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, I remember I was in the coffee shop and I read that, and I was so angry at somebody in the moment.
Yeah, man.
And I was like, what an insight. Jesus doesn't mention it.
Yeah. Well, bro, listen, man, I was just reading this morning in my devotional time, Luke 23, okay, where Jesus prays, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And one of the things that struck me from Luke's gospel in this one chapter was the amount of times that someone declared, this man is innocent. He has done nothing deserving of death. Pilate said it, Herod said it, the thief on the cross said it. Like, multiple times in this chapter, it was just, he's done nothing. He's innocent. He doesn't deserve death. He doesn't deserve to be punished, over and over again.
Yeah.
Yet Jesus willingly goes to the cross to die for sinners like us, to pay for our forgiveness. And as he's hanging on the cross, being brutally murdered, he prays for the people who put him there. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Yeah. This is why I say it's supernatural stuff, you know. It's like, it's one thing if somebody steps in your foot and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I forgive you, no problem. It's another thing when someone deeply wounds you.
Yeah.
When someone commits an injustice against you that you know, dude, it's going to take extreme measures for that to be set right in some way.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of forgiveness, man. I learned this from my mom. I've shared this story before, you know, my grandmother was murdered in Richmond, Virginia back in the 1980s. Godly woman, saint of a woman, loved Jesus, devoted follower. And she was at home one day, and some teenage boys broke into her apartment looking for drugs. They were in the wrong place. And when she told them she had no idea what they were talking about, they loaded her up with bullets, bro, and left her in her apartment for dead. And she died, which is insane. So my mom carried a lot of anger and bitterness for a lot of years until the Lord really got a hold of her life and started working on her.
Yeah.
And one of the things that my mom told me is she's like, I started to realize after understanding how much I have been forgiven that I couldn't withhold forgiveness.
Yeah.
She's like, when I understood how much Jesus had forgiven me, I knew like I have to forgive them. I can't continue to hold that against them in that way. And it was freeing for her. You know, well, I mean, one of the things I always tell people, like, dude, unforgiveness will eat you up, bro.
Oh, yeah.
It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It will not hurt them at all, but it will eat you alive. And so when you choose to just go, okay, Spirit of God, help me. And in response to what Jesus has done for me, I will extend to others what I've received from him. Dude, it frees you on a soul level from all of that that you're carrying.
And just to encourage someone out there, I think for some of us and for some situations, this is not just a one-time occurrence.
Yeah, dude.
It is something you probably practice for days and weeks or months, depending on who you're forgiving and for what. Yeah. And it could be a lifetime that you are choosing to wake up every morning, be reminded of whatever this person or these people have done to you, and choosing, I'm not going to allow that to give me a bitter heart.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow it to cause me to hate, to cause hurt, to any of those things. But I'm going to choose to forgive. Yeah. And again, all for the reasons you guys said, because man, Christ loved us so much, he gave his life for us.
That's right.
Yeah. But there's also, and this is not in our notes, there's also the other side on, and this is something I try to practice with my boys. When someone says they're sorry and you're practicing forgiveness, is practicing the I forgive you.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot for someone to be vulnerable and say, hey, I did something wrong.
Yep.
I'm sorry. And I remember growing up, my family, we were not great at apologies. And it was hard, and it was something that I brought into marriage. And I just remember my wife and I, we were in an argument. Shocking, we argue. But, at the end of this argument, I just said, I'm sorry. And at the time, her response was, it was something like, okay, or whatever. And it broke me, because it is hard enough to just be like, hey, it's on me. I did it.
Yeah.
And when the other person goes, all right, and doesn't receive it, man, it hurts. And I, in that moment, I was able to share that with her. And it was a great moment for us in our marriage to learn. And it's not just her, right? Like, I have to have those moments as well, where it's like, I forgive you.
Yeah.
I hear you and I forgive you. And, the other thought I had in regard to forgiveness was, it's a one thing to write to, hey man, I really forgive you. That's not the same when you're just choosing to go, all right, whatever, I'll forget about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, you got to choose, because you're not going to forget about it. Especially we're talking relationships.
Again, it'll eat you up. That's right.
It eats you up.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next time the same thing happens, it triggers it, which you realize, oh, you never really forgave that person.
Yeah. That's right.
You held on to it.
Yeah, man. While you guys were talking, I was trying to look this up real quick. There's two passages in the Gospels that are so challenging. One of them is when Jesus is talking to Peter. He's like, how many times I got to forgive him? So up to 7. And he's like, no. It's like 7 times 7. It's like he gives this answer that's like every time. Like, you forgive an infinite amount of times. Like, it's really, really hard, which was not what he was expecting in the moment. But the one that I pulled up was Luke 17. And I've been reading Luke lately, so this is all fresh on my mind.
Yeah.
But what he says here, I mean, man, it's so hard. If your brother sins, rebuke him. And if he repents, forgive him. And this is what's hard. Luke 17:4. If he sins against you 7 times in a day and 7 times returns to say, I repent, you must forgive him. Who does that? I mean, my natural tendency is like, this is the 3rd time you've done this today. Dummy, quit asking me to forgive you. Like, stop doing it.
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, this is how radical we have to be about forgiveness, and he's making that point there. That's like, we have to live with the spirit of forgiveness about us. This is who we are as Christians. We are a forgiving people because we are a forgiven people. And what we can't do is just receive it from God.
Yeah.
But forgiveness has to flow through us Like we have to be channels of forgiveness so that other people experience from us what we say we've experienced from him.
So funny, man. I'm sorry, but it just makes me think of the road rage person. Like, how many times are you willing for someone to cut you off before you're like,
why'd you look at me?
No more.
Why'd you look at me? When you said
Sorry, man.
Yeah,
No reason.
we wanted
I
to
meant
talk
to look
to
at
you
Carlos.
about this. What?
but what did you say?
But yeah, how many times are you willing for that person to cut you off and forgive them until you're like, no, that's it.
Yeah.
And this is so counterintuitive to it, right? Like, how many times are you willing for someone to offend you, to do that thing that just gets on, that just, unravels you, right?
Yeah.
Or how many times are you willing to read that same post that keeps criticizing you? And you just go, you know what?
Yeah.
Man, every time I make the decision to do something apart from God's word, Jesus Christ looks at me and he says, you're forgiven.
Yeah.
Like, it just kind of, it changes the whole way we think about it.
That's right. Yeah.
And it should.
Yeah, it should. When I even think too, man, because I've heard people say this, they don't deserve to be forgiven. After what they've done, they don't deserve it. And this again is where we have to be really honest with ourselves. Like, neither do we.
Yeah.
Like, heaven will be full of people who did not deserve forgiveness. 100% of the people in heaven who are there did not deserve forgiveness, but God gave forgiveness anyway at great expense to himself. I mean, it cost the life of his own son. But I also think about just those extreme cases, man. You know what I'm saying? Of like, thief on the cross, bro. That dude's going to be in heaven. I can't wait to meet him after some of the crap that he did, Barabbas. Can't wait to meet that guy, insurrectionist, murderer. But even like modern examples, it's believed that Jeffrey Dahmer potentially came to faith in Jesus Christ. But I mean, you think about this, bro. You know what that dude did. And there are stories that after murdering people, dismembering people, cannibalizing people, all kind of sexual debauchery, that he was baptized at some point and expressed faith in Jesus. Okay, can you imagine we show up in eternity one day, that dude's there? And what would people say about a guy like that? That dude doesn't deserve to be forgiven. Yeah, this is the radical grace of God. And it's what makes Christianity so insane, is that God has grace for people like that too. And that God offers forgiveness to people like that too. And so when we always think about it, well, where do we draw the line on forgiveness? We don't, and we can't.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you to speak to, was the person that's just listening going, man, you don't know what they did to me. And I think we'd all sit here and go, man, we love you.
Yeah.
And we don't know. We have not experienced what you've experienced. And it's hard. Like you said, the very first thing is recognizing the difficulty of what you are trying and about to do.
Well, I think to your point, bro, it's so important to just understand what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not you saying that what that person did to you is okay. Forgiveness is not you giving them a pass. All right, let's just not worry about it. No big deal. No, some of you have experienced things that are a huge deal. I mean, you've been wronged in ways that, like, people need to go to jail for that stuff. Like, for real. Very, very serious things. And so we're not in any way suggesting that you forgiving that person is like, oh, it's fine. Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, I'm giving you a pass. That's not the point, okay? Forgiveness is simply, I'm choosing to no longer hold that against you. I'm not going to expect you to somehow repay me for the things that you've done. What I'm going to do instead, especially if it's like deep wound, major injustice, instead what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave that in the hands of God, and I'm going to let him deal with it. And what I'm going to do is not hold it against you. And to my earlier point, and it ain't just for you, it's also for me. I've got to release this to the Lord. And not because as long as I hold it against you, it's going to eat me alive, man. And so forgiveness is actually a gift for the forgiver. Not just the person being forgiven, but it's a gift for the forgiver, because, like, I don't have to live under all of this anymore. My anger, my bitterness, my resentment. And so I just hope that people take comfort in knowing, like, we are not suggesting that in any way you give that person a pass. We're not saying it's permission to do it again. I'll even say this: forgiveness doesn't mean that the relationship goes back to what it was before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not the point of forgiveness. It's not like, hey, let's be buddies again. That relationship may forever be broken in terms of like fellowship, friendship, whatever it may be. And I'm thinking of like specific examples, dude.
Yeah.
You know, the husband is beating the crap out of his wife. The wife may need to leave, get her kids out of there. And there could come a point for the wife where she forgives the husband for what he did, but she don't need to put herself back in that, you know?
Yeah.
I think about the situation like my mom. And those boys, it's like she can forgive those boys, but it ain't like she's like hanging out with those boys. You know, there's no fellowship there, but there can be forgiveness there.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's very complicated. It's very nuanced, but this is why I said at the beginning, this is supernatural stuff that the Spirit of God has to work out in you. You can't do it on your own.
Yeah. I mean, it is crazy that Jesus also tells you to pray, like he says in the Lord's Prayer, to forgive us as we forgive those who trespass against us, you know? And I believe it is a supernatural thing, especially if it's hard, you know, like it's going to be difficult. So you need the power of the Holy Spirit to help you forgive some people. And I would say an application would be read up on some stories that have just needed, man, like the Spirit of God to be a part of it. There's no reason why that person should have forgave that person other than that they've experienced the grace that Jesus has given them.
That's right.
And I was thinking of, I don't remember the book, but it was...
You've read too many books, bro.
No, it was a long time ago. I remember, dude, I was in 29 Palms in the desert when in training, and I was reading this book, and I opened it up, dude. It was desert. I was on like a bench in the middle of this desert, and I'm reading this chapter. And I think either the chapter or the subheading was Turkey Head Lady. And so it was an article of kids that were doing these pranks, and they were throwing frozen turkeys to cars on a freeway.
Killed somebody?
It didn't kill her.
But it messed her up.
She almost died. Messed up her face, right? She needed so many different surgeries and all these things. And they're just like, she shouldn't be alive. Like it took weeks to get her back to be at a decent state. And she's writing, the author's writing about this, and she, the boys obviously are coming against some crazy charges.
Yeah.
And she shows up on the court date. And the boys are sitting there. And this woman stands up. She says, "Is there anything that anybody wants to say?" And the woman says, "I'd like to say something." She stands up and she says, "I just need to tell him that I forgive him. And I'm dropping the charges."
Good gracious, bro.
And I was just like, when you hear stories like that,
yeah.
And she says, the only reason I could do this is because of the grace of God.
That's right. Dude, you know what that story reminds me of? Back a few years ago when that kid, I don't remember.
The Amish community?
No, it was the kid who went into the black church and shot up that black church. It was the white dude who went, I don't remember the name. Yeah. But he went in, and some of the church members showed up at his hearing and stood and said, "We forgive you. We forgive you." Now, again, that dude still went to jail, rightfully so. He should have. But for those people to show up and go, "We forgive you." And it's the same. It's like, and the only reason they could extend forgiveness to like a young white kid who walked into their church while they were gathered for worship and shot the place up and killed people. The only thing that makes that possible is the grace of God and the power of the Holy Spirit, you know?
Yeah.
There was another story that came to mind, and I know we got to keep going. I'll say this and somebody can look it up, but I read a story about Corrie ten Boom, who, you know, she was in a concentration camp, Holocaust survivor, the whole deal. And she shared a story about being in a church service. This was post-Holocaust, and one of the SS guards that was at the camp she was in showed up. And she was like, when he walked in the door, she immediately recognized him, froze in fear, and then anger and fury just started to fill her up. And at one point, he tried to shake her hand, and it was like she couldn't even extend her hand because of what she was feeling. And at some point, she reached her hand out, and she shook the hand of this SS guard who was there at the concentration camp she was in. And she said it was like the love of God just started to warm me in that moment. Mm-hmm. And she shared the story of like her ability to forgive that man who put her through so much pain and suffering. But to hear her like explain the struggle.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I felt this way, and then here's what the Lord did for me. And I just say that to encourage somebody. Like, you might feel a way about that person you need to forgive, but if you will open yourself up to the work of God, He can do something in you that you probably aren't expecting.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll free you up in a massive way.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So application, if you're struggling with forgiveness, pray about it. Mm-hmm. Or ask for the help of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Get around people who can encourage you,
Yeah.
right, to speak into your life. Don't talk to people who don't talk to God,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And preach the gospel to yourself.
And preach the gospel to yourself.
You need the gospel, dude. You got to remember how much you've been forgiven.
Yeah. And so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I know we spoke a lot about forgiveness. So let's talk about the other major thing in the story.
Yeah.
And that is a father waiting for his son.
Yeah.
So I know there's a whole bunch of parents out there right now that are waiting on their kids, praying for their kids, man, that either they have turned away from Jesus or they've never even surrendered their life to Jesus. Let's encourage them, because I feel like the story that Jesus shared is like, man, there's hope, as this father waits for his son. So
yeah. So how do we encourage parents with
how do we encourage
prodigal kids, right? Here's what I was thinking about. We've been talking over the past few weeks, asking that question, who's your one? Mm-hmm. Baptismal wraps filled up with names of people. We've given out cards for people to write on. And I know there are parents in our church who've written down the names of kids.
Oh, yeah.
Kids who have turned their back on faith, turned their back on family, and they've walked out the door. And we shared this beautiful story this weekend of a father who's a great friend of mine who went through that with his own boy. And it was just a beautiful story of what is possible, okay? And I just thought when I watched it, I'm like, that's why we do not give up on our children. I think it's easy as a parent, you go into freak out mode and panic mode because your kid walks out the door and I don't believe this and I don't want what you've got, and they start living crazy and whatever. I think it's easy to slip into panic mode and you start to worry like, oh my gosh, is this it? I have to imagine the dad in the story. If this would have been a true story, he probably would have felt those same emotions. Yeah. Is my boy gone forever, or is he going to come back? And the thing that I love about the story is it just infuses hope into us. It's like we have to remain hopeful because no person can out-sin the grace of God. Like, we can't run too far. Yeah. So one of the encouragements I would give is like, hey, parent with a prodigal child, I would just say you got to remember that no matter how far they run, grace is still available to them. Mm-hmm. That they can't out-sin the grace of God. They can't go too far, and that God can change the life of any person at any time, including your son or your daughter. Yeah. And so I would say remain hopeful, and then I would also say to be very prayerful, dude. Yeah. It's the blessed practices that we teach our church. It's like there's a reason we say begin with prayer. Yeah. Like, if you rush past prayer, you're missing the point. Because if you rush past prayer, what you're doing at that point is taking it all into your own hands. Mm-hmm. I'll do it. I'll make it happen. I'll convince them to come back. Whatever. Yeah. But when we start with prayer, what we are recognizing again is like, God, this is too big for me. I can't pull this off. I can't convince them. I can't persuade them. God, you have to do a supernatural work in them. And so I would say to the parent with a prodigal child, you need to be on your face every day, begging the Lord to reveal himself, to show himself, convicting of sin, revealing to your child their need for Christ. And then I would say you get all your friends, all your family, everybody you know who knows Jesus, and you have them praying. Yeah. And you cry out on their behalf. There's a powerful story from Pastor Jim Cymbala. He wrote a book called Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire. Yeah. It's one of those books I just go back and read regularly. But he shares a story about his daughter who was on the run, prodigal daughter. And they were having a prayer meeting one night at Brooklyn Tab. And somebody in the crowd basically stopped the prayer meeting and was like, I just have this strong impression that we need to pray for your daughter. We need to pray for your daughter to come back home. So at this prayer meeting, man, they stopped and they started praying for Pastor Cymbala's daughter. And I think it was like the very next day. If I'm getting the details wrong, forgive me, okay? But I think it was like the very next day, he shows up. His daughter's at his house. I think his like wife reached out. I was like, you got to come home. She's here or whatever. And so he shows up, and his daughter's clearly broken, in tears. And here's the question she asked. Who was praying for me last night? Who was praying for me last night? And he's like, we all were at the prayer meeting. And this is why we don't underestimate prayer.
Oh, yeah.
Like prayer is how God accomplishes his purposes in his world. And so when we pray for people far from God and we do it collectively, there is great power in that.
Yeah.
Do not stop praying, man. No matter how long it takes. Dude, pray him home is my thing. Pray him home, dude.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, it's so hard, man, because at the end of the day, as a parent, you cannot control whether your child decides to follow the Lord or not.
Yeah.
Like, you can't control it. Like, you don't get to determine it.
Yeah.
Right? They got to make a decision. And, you know, I've used this to encourage others, and I've used it to encourage myself as well. Proverbs 22, right? Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Yeah.
There's this encouragement that, you know, when he is old, when he or she are old, they will not depart. But it's more so the responsibility it is on us with our children of, hey, you know, I'm doing all I can to talk to my kids about the Lord, right? And if they depart, man, Lord, would that be true?
Yeah,
Like, would they not depart? Like, would they come back?
Yeah.
Right? And I know that proverb doesn't say they're going to come back.
Right.
But there's a hope of they're not going to depart from this truth that you train them up in.
Yeah, they can't get away from it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so right, I struggle with the control piece as a parent.
For sure.
But man, I love, as you're talking about prayer.
Yeah.
One of the things with a friend that I've got that has a prodigal, you know, he was asking me about my kids, and I said, man, one of the things that I'm learning to do more and more is just really rely on fruit of the Spirit, and specifically with my kids, kindness and gentleness, faithfulness, like some of these things. And as I'm praying, like peace with them, because y'all have heard me talk about my kids on this podcast.
Yeah.
Man, they are awesome, but sometimes drive me flipping insane.
Yeah. Just a little.
But that's where the gentleness and the kindness come in. And as I was saying this to my friend, he said, man, I've never thought about that, about how I interact with my prodigal and my kids, and just interacting kindly and gentle, right? Because, I mean, I think in some of us, there's this, man, I gotta, like, if they're around, man, I gotta get them back.
Yep.
Like, what can I do in this moment? But yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right, bro. I've shared this story before. Moody, you bring this story up to me at times. But I think it illustrates the point that you're making. So the biggest fight I got into with my dad.
That was my favorite.
As a teenager.
Can't wait to do this to my kid.
As a teenage idiot son, okay? I'll never forget, I had done something stupid. I don't remember what I did. I skipped school, something like that. I was grounded, right, for like weeks. And it was after church on a Sunday, believe it or not, when all this happened. I wanted to go hang out with my friends after church. I want to go get lunch. And my parents were like, absolutely not. You're grounded, dude. You can't do that. So, man, I was so mad because, I'm an idiot teenage son. And we get home from church, and my parents' house that I grew up in, there was like a carport, you know, open garage kind of thing. And we had a door, like a what do you call it? Like a sliding, not a sliding door, but
screen door?
Screen door, yeah, screen door. And so I was going in the door first. My mom was behind me. I flung that screen door open, and it came back and hit my mom. And the next thing I know, my dad had me by the back of my shirt collar, and I was up against the wall, and my dad was like, you better never hit my wife again. And I just remember I was in my dad's face because I was an idiot. And I was telling my dad, hit me, you know, whatever. And my dad, he didn't hit me. I knew he probably wanted to because I deserved it. But he let me go, and I took off. I just left. I started walking. I don't even know where I was going, but I just started walking. And I got pretty far down the road, and my dad pulled up in his truck. And what I just remember about my dad in this moment is his gentleness. Son, get in the truck. It wasn't, hey, you idiot. You know what? Get in the truck, boy. Well, I'm going to wear you out. And I was like, no, I was so mad. But my dad was like, son, get in the truck. I love you. Get in the truck. Please get in the truck. It's like the father in the story, you know, entreating his son. But to your point, I think as parents, like if we have prodigals, it's got to be that approach.
Yeah.
We're not, again, we're not trying to win arguments. We're trying to win our kids.
Yeah.
And that requires a certain type of love and gentleness. You know, it's like we're meeting them where they are, despite the things that they have done, in an effort not just to win them back to our faith system, but to their Father in heaven. And I love that you bring that up. That does require a great gentleness and a deep sense of love for your kid, despite the fact that they're an idiot. So I love that my dad modeled that for me.
Bro, I don't know that you've ever shared the very last part of that story of you walking away and him showing up in the truck.
Oh, yeah.
Like that, because every time I see James's dad, I call him James Griffin Sr., because he is.
He is.
But, I mean, he is the most gentle man.
He is.
Yeah.
He is the most kind, gentle. And again, fruit of the Spirit, man. When you think of all 9 of them, man, it's like we had one of our pastors at an ordination council, and he's talking about the fruit of the Spirit. And it's like, dude, he's talking about patience specifically. He's like, how can I'm trying to summarize, but basically it's just this idea, like, dude, how can I not be patient? Like if this thing lives in me, it is what it is. Like I'm patient. So even as parents, and you had said something, but I even think as it goes to what the prodigals may do, but also what they may believe at this time. Because I've got friends that have prodigals that grew up in the church, and right now are just believing because they've hung out with folks that told them a false truth, a false sense of who God is and who God isn't, and how could God love and not allow you to be who you want to be, all this kind of stuff. And man, these parents, I love it because they're just, even when they talk about it, they're brokenhearted. But man, they have this patience about them that is only Spirit-led. Right? Of just, man, we're just praying.
That's right.
They'll turn back.
That's right. Well, and it made me too, this is just going through my brain, you know, as and this could apply not just to like prodigal sons and daughters, but even other family members,
Friends,
you know, whatever it is. You don't want, if you really want to see them return to faith or come into a saving relationship with Jesus, like you want to leave the door open for relationship always. But at the same time, and this is the tension, at the same time, depending on what they're doing, you may also need to set up some healthy boundaries. So what I mean by that is if you got a kid in your house, a grown child in your house who is wrecking the home because they're using drugs or something like that, you might have to set up a boundary there, you know? And if they can't agree to not do that in your house, it might mean that they don't live in your house. I love you. I want to help you. Let's get you treatment, whatever it may be, but you can't be here doing that. But we love you. And we're going to pray for you. And we're going to leave that door open for a relationship. But there's got to be a boundary there. Again, maybe it's another family member who struggles in certain ways with something similar, addiction, whatever it might be. It may mean that you have to set the terms for that relationship. I think oftentimes where people get into trouble with stuff like this is they allow the unhealthy person in the family to set the terms for the relationships, and you can't do that. You can't let the unhealthiest person in the family dictate how the family functions and operates. The healthy people in a family need to set the terms for the relationships, okay? Hey, we want to be in a relationship with you because we love you. Here are the terms for that relationship, and if you can agree to this, you are welcome. And you can come on, man, and it's going to be great. If you can't, that might mean we have to engage in a relationship at a distance in certain ways. So I'm just trying to help the person who might be listening to this and they're going, yeah, but you don't know what my kid's doing. You don't know what my kid's bringing to my home. You don't know. So again, and you may need to go get some professional help even to figure out what those boundaries look like. But still, even so, pray that the Lord would keep your heart soft so that the door of relationship can remain open. in whatever capacity you can have that relationship in.
Yeah. In the story, the kid that came back home, he left his old life behind.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't trying to drag his new life into his life again with his dad. And so I think that's just a reminder that the prodigal son left that life behind.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're in this space where this person wants to continue to go into that life, you need to learn how to forgive, but also, like we kind of talked about, is to give accountability, you know, and figure out if that has to be you. Sometimes I got to figure out, like, with my friends, am I the one giving them accountability, or someone else needs to be, right? And just learning those things. But a little son that you said, Moody, about just when a kid leaves and like training them up and whatnot, it's a principle, not a promise. And I remember one thing for when I was a youth pastor, one of my goals for my students was I just wanted them, if they ever left Jesus, I wanted them to miss him.
Yeah.
You know? And so I remember talking to so many parents. They're like, man, my kids left. They're doing all these stuff. And I was like, hey, you need to pray for them. Okay, prayer needs to be your first thing, all right?
Yeah.
I love the fact that one of our staff values is like, hey, you need to pray before you plan. You know, pray before you approach. Pray before you call them. Pray before you text them. Pray before you see them. Just pray. And then the next thing, try to expose them to the gospel at every chance you get. And that might mean just being gentle. That might mean, I mean, I love the fact that we're using the blessed practices. That might mean you just listen.
That's right.
You just spend, you just eat with them. You just hang out with them. You love them, right? And then the third thing I would say is just keep seeking them. Keep looking for them. Like I feel like in the story, the father, he's looking. Like he noticed that he was a long way off. That means that he was waiting for him, right? If this was a technology or a little bit more modern, this guy's probably texting them, calling them, leaving them voicemails, stopping by the house, knocking on the door, you know, like,
hey buddy, you know I love you.
Doing things like that. But because this guy probably didn't know where he was. But in a modern sense, he was. This was him seeking him.
That's right. That's right.
But
and I've talked to parents about this, man, especially parents who have like grown older children who've turned from the faith and all that kind of stuff. And my encouragement to them is always just make sure your child knows that your door is open if they ever need to come back home. That's it, dude.
That's good.
Like you need to have the kind of relationship with your child where you can be honest enough to go, hey, I love you. I believe God has so much more for you. I do not agree with the way that you're living. I don't approve of it, but you're still my son or daughter, so I love you. And I just want you to know, dude, if you ever hit rock bottom, things ever get hard, the door's open if you ever need to come back home. And then if they do, this is when you have to do the hard work of like, okay, here are now the terms for being here. And here's how we're going to do this relationship. And again, what you don't do is like throw everything that they've done back in their face, and you don't get all judgy in that way or hang that over their head or see, I told you so and you should have listened sooner. And it's not what you do, because that's not what God your Father did to you. He brought you in, he gave you a feast, threw you a party. So, I mean, it's amazing. But at the same time, if you think about what living under the lordship of Jesus means, is God brings us into the family, and then he goes, and here are now the terms for being in the family. You can't just do whatever you want to do anymore. And so if we are going to be in right relationship, this is what it means, and this is what it looks like. And you can do that as a parent in a very loving way, and in a way that would portray the goodness and the grace of Christ, but also the seriousness of what it looks like to walk in obedience to him.
Yeah, and I think people need to hear it's okay to do that.
100%.
You know, it's okay to do that. They need that structure.
And it's the loving thing to do. When you love somebody, you don't just let them do whatever they want to do. That's indifference, especially if you know that they're going to do something that's going to hurt them in the long run. I mean, no person who loves a person just goes like,
do whatever.
Whatever.
You do you.
It's so stupid. But when we love people and we want the best for them, we're going to try to guide and direct them in the way that they should go. And this especially applies to our kids, man, for sure.
I had a thought. What if there's a parent out there, and I've actually met a couple people when I was in youth group, they're like, they're just done with their kids. Like, how would you encourage them to unharden their heart? They're just like, they've been harmed or they've done something that, man, they just, I don't know, brought shame to the family name. I don't know what could have happened, right? But they've done something and they just like, man, I don't want nothing to do with my kid, And I remember taking one of these guys to Passion City because I asked him, I was like, where's your dad? He's like, he didn't want nothing to do with me. And I was talking to his aunt who was part of my youth group, and I was like, yeah, he's hurt him so much that he just let him do whatever. And I was like, man, I was like, 25 at the time. I didn't know what to tell his dad.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, what would y'all say to a father that's just struggling to forgive his son? Like, you don't want him to come home,
So you said father, so let me speak to the fathers, okay? And I'm going to say this out of love. Like, please, no, I'm not trying to be a jerk when I say this, but what I would tell a father is that you have no right to abdicate your responsibility as a father, no matter how you feel. That's what I would say. As fathers and as men, we are called, and this is what we're building into the men of Crosspoint City Church, we are called as men to be lovers, leaders, protectors, and providers, okay? So when it comes to our families, we love God above all else, and then we love our people like we love ourselves, and our neighbors, our wife, our kids, whatever. Leaders, we lead by serving. And so in the family dynamic, it's like, we're laying our lives down for our wives, we're disciple makers of our children. But then I also think, the provision thing, it's like get up, bust your butt, go to work every day, take responsibility for the people that God's given you to care for. But the protector piece means that we stand in the gap for people who are vulnerable, can't do it on their own, and that includes our children. And so I was talking to a family just today about this. If you think about what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6 about the relationships between parents and kids, the call is to bring our children up in the instruction and discipline of the Lord. So the way that works together is that as you instruct them, when they disobey, you discipline them, and you do it out of love because you understand that disobedience puts your kids in danger, okay? That when a child disobeys you, if you're really following the Lord, if your child disobeys you, he or she is disobeying the Lord because they have a direct commandment from the Lord to honor mom and dad, okay? So any type of disobedience puts your kid in a place of danger. This is why Ted Tripp says that discipline is a rescue mission. It's a rescue mission, okay? And so what you're trying to do in disciplining your kid is you're trying to bring them back to this place of safety, this place where you as a parent can bless them, this place where God can bless them. And so again, it's your job as a parent, as a dad, to do everything you can do in your power to protect your child from what you know is going to damage them and ruin their lives. So what happens as a dad is when you abdicate that responsibility, bro, you just throw your kid to the wolves. I'm done with them. You don't have a right to be done with them. Do you understand the danger that they're in? And as a dad, you're just going to leave them out there because you're frustrated? Like, bro, that's not what we do as men and fathers. What we do is we suck it up, we get over ourselves, we put our feelings aside at times, and we go after our children, and we fight for them. And to be the protectors that we are means we go to battle, bro. Like, we stand in the gap, we understand the spiritual nature of what's happening in their lives, that the enemy wants to wreck them and devour them. And as men of God and as fathers, we go, I'm not going to let that happen. Not on my watch, dude. I'm not going to abdicate that responsibility. I'll go fight tooth and nail for my child if I have to bring him out of that. And so dads, we don't throw our kids to the wolves, man. We war with wolves and we war with the enemy to make sure our kids are safe. And so you got to fight for them. That's what I said.
Yeah, and even when you look at this parable and the younger brother who left and disrespected, dishonored, and in this culture, he did things, James, you talk about it in your message, that would have gotten him killed.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. Like, he deserved death for what he did by taking the inheritance, basically saying to the dad, you're dead to me. And Jesus is sharing the story, I think, in regard to the younger brother, to say that no, and in context of what we're talking about, there is nothing that your child can do that's going to give you any reason to not forgive them when they come back. Right? And it's that, like, when they come back. And Carlos, to that, even that question, I definitely ain't got a great answer like Pastor here. That was fantastic.
He got me all preachy, man.
That was great.
And just to be very clear too, I'm talking primarily about kids who are in your home. Like we want to fight for our kids no matter how old they are. But it gets tricky when they're adults and they grow up and they move out.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you don't have the same authority in their lives as you once did. And their responsibility as kids is still to honor you, but they don't have to obey you like they did when they were in your house. Like, I mean, if that makes sense what I'm saying. And so if they just get out there and they do their own thing, you can still fight for them through prayer, sharing truth, the whole deal. But bro, if we're talking about a kid in your house, nah, bro. You don't get to abdicate that ever. And you got to fight at all costs. Like, you can't just give up on your kids.
Yeah.
Oh, man, this made me think. You talk about, I think you said, salvation and adoption.
Yeah.
It just made me think there are kids, adults or kids, whose parents are out there and just, you're not welcome back in my family. And how important it is for us as the body of Christ to adopt that child and bring them into our home. To say, hey, I know this isn't against me, but you are welcome in my home. I don't know if there's a connection there, but I just thought, man, like adopting someone who's unforgiven or who feels like, man, my family won't forgive me. I'm not good enough for that. But it's our job as the body of Christ to say, hey, like nothing you do in my family is going to cast you away. So you're welcome here.
Yeah. I was thinking about.
Hopefully that's not heretical.
What?
Nothing.
The way you just said. We'll pray for you. But I was thinking about the reverse of it. Obviously I was a prodigal, and so my mom prayed for me, came home and whatnot. But then I was thinking about like forgiveness the other way around for the kids. Like there was a moment in my life where I had to forgive my dad.
Yeah. Yep.
And there was, and so there's just like that, it's like twofold, like you as a child, if your parents have done you wrong, you are also called to forgive them, I know that they're older. I know that they're supposed to be wiser and supposed to go first and all the things. But sometimes if you're the only believer in your house or in your family, you have to go first to go and forgive. And I just remember, dude, I've talked about my dad before. My dad left us when we were really young. Didn't have a lot of memories. Obviously, my family talked, not haven't said the nicest things about him. But I remember when God convicted me that I just need to forgive him and I need to seek him, right? And I went to Dominican Republic. It was 2016 in the summer. It was actually Thanksgiving. I planned in the summer that I was going to go on Thanksgiving. And I went, and it was the first Thanksgiving meal I ever had with my dad that I remember, right? It's like the grace of God.
Yeah.
All I remember about my dad are the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's because I had forgiven him, and God gave me like a supernatural power to be able to only remember the good memories that I can't even think about the bad stuff. The times I waited for him, the times I asked God, why'd he leave? All those things, none of that. And it started just because I said, because God forgave me, I want to forgive him. And it was like, man, so if you're a kid and your parents have done you wrong, go first, man. God will bless you in that in so many different ways. Just to encourage somebody.
Yeah, this whole thing's hard, man.
Yeah.
Like there's so many layers to it. And the reality is we live in such a broken world, and there are so many broken relationships. And I mean, to the point that you just made, man, I think it's the hardest when it's at home and when those broken relationships are with family.
Yeah.
It's parents and kids, it's siblings, it's whatever it is. And again, just to reiterate, and I know we've said it a bunch of times already, but it does require a supernatural grace.
Yeah.
There's no way that happens in your life without the grace of God,
No way.
Like I'm married to a woman. Same thing, She's never known her dad. That's a whole different thing. Not a great relationship with mom, just because of some issues there. And to be married to a woman who's like, I've forgiven her. The relationship has never been what my wife has wanted it to be. And it's not because of my wife, but for my wife to be able to say, but I have forgiven her. And I'm not going to hold any of that stuff against her.
Yeah.
Even though she still carries some scars and wounds from some stuff, bro, it's just a testament to what God can do in the life of a person who would surrender in faith to him and just go, I need your help with this.
Yeah.
I don't want to carry this for the rest of my life. So God, help me.
Yeah.
Do this for me. Do this through me. And I think if you ask for that in humility and in faith, he'll do it no matter the situation.
That's good. Something I was thinking about when you were talking was that forgiveness doesn't change your past, but it will for sure impact your future.
Oh, for sure. That's a good word, dude.
And it's powerful when we do it, especially the fact that we as God's people do it. And
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we go?
I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah, we did.
I think we've covered a lot.
I think this was good, man. I hope this encouraged somebody. If you're that parent waiting for your kid, man, I hope you can continue to pray for them and wait for them and encourage them when they're with you. If the reversal, man, I pray for you as well.
Yep.
But with that being said, hey, we love you guys, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Pursuit with James Griffin. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll never miss an episode. If you have questions about the message, the scriptures, or faith in general, you can send them to us by texting the word question to the number 22722. For more information about our church or this podcast, please visit crosspointcity.com or follow us online at Crosspoint City. If you found value in this podcast, we would love it if you took time to like it and share it with a friend. Doing that will help more people know and follow Jesus. And finally, we want to invite you to join us each week for one of our gatherings in person or live on YouTube. We hope to see you soon.